If you enjoyed this webinar and you want to get into the next one, save the dates, mark it on your calendar, April 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's the last Tuesday of the month. And I will also be doing my third webinar on May 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's basically the last Tuesday of the month is when you can expect poker coaching webinar from Evan Gripst Jarvis. Okay. Let's see what we got in the question. Blazerk says, fantastic. Thanks. I have learned these things somewhat by experience, but to get this explained like this is very valuable. I agree with you 100%. Having things broken down in a very easy to understand manner makes it a lot easier to retain them. And also the reason that I included all the pictures in this presentation is because some people are more visual learners rather than audio learners, and words don't really stick with them the same way that images do. So I felt that by adding images to the presentation, that whether someone's, left brain or right brain, whether they do better with, words or images, the concept is clear for both sides of the brain. And if both sides of the brain are picking it up, it's going to be able to integrate it and understand it more. I also found just in making the presentation, in writing the slides, I was getting more insights. And then when I added the images, I'm like, oh man, even more insights. So anytime we can get back to the basics and really break it down in its most basic elements, the fewest components, the least needed words, it solidifies the understanding in our minds and is a great place to continue to learn from and to build on top of. Stolas says, first, great webinar. Thank you. Question, when sitting down at a cash game with no information on anyone, what is your thought process for the first few orbits? Oh man, I love when people ask cash game questions like this because that's what I'm about, man. That's my jam. My thought process is to sit down, relax, and assess the game, to assess the terrain. I know that no poker game is the same, and I want to figure things out and figure out what kind of environment I'm in. So when I sit down at a table, if it's 100 by blind max, I'll usually sit for the max. Although if I'm trying to keep under the radar, I might buy in for 60 blinds and then top up later. Because one of the things about cash is you can always add more chips to your stack, but you can't take them off your stack. Likewise, if it's a deep stack game where you can sit with like 200 big blinds, I will almost never buy in for 200 big blinds right away. I'll almost always buy in for that 100 big blind amount and then see if I have good position, see if there's a lot of dead money on the table, see if the deep stack players are to my right or if they're weaker. And if that's the case, I'll top up. But if the deep stack players are all the good players or they're all on my left, I usually won't add more. I'll just sit with 100 blinds. Another thing I find is people are a lot more willing to double you up when you have a shorter stack. So, if it's a 100 max game, you buy them with 60 blinds. It's a lot easier to get the double up than if you have 100. And same, when you're sitting 200 blinds deep, people are pretty nitty about doubling you up. Whereas if half the table's got 200 blinds and you're the guy just sitting with 100 bigs, usually they'll give you action. So I assess the terrain, I sit down, I look at the chip stacks, I look at how people are stacking their chips to try to get assessments on whether someone is a loose or a tight player. Generally, loose players stack their chips up tall, and tight players, like really nitty players, they'll have like half stacks, like stacks of 10. Or if someone has like really sloppy chip stacks, they're usually kind of a reckless player or just a very action player. If someone's really organized, they're usually more conservative. So I'll look for things like that. And then I'll try to assess what people's mental state is. I'll try to assess who's sharp, who's focused, who's there to win. I'll try to assess who's tired, who's tilted, who's drunk, who's there to gamble, there to mix it up. And then I'll try to engage in conversation to get more information. If I think someone's a reg, I'll ask, good game, you've been running well, like easy game, like whatever. Or if someone's, more on the recreational side and they're there to have fun, I'll be like, what are your plans for the evening? What are your plans for the weekend? I keep it casual. I try not to give away too much about myself. But if someone's like, hey, are you that YouTube guy? are you that streamer? Are you that teacher? I'm honest. I'm like, yes, I'm that guy. What's your name? Nice to meet you. I don't lie to people at the table. But I don't jump in and be like, hey guys, I'm Evan Grips Jarvis from YouTube. You should check out my videos. Like, I don't do that. I just kind of sit down, get comfortable. I chill. It's kind of like, you know, when you go to a party or when you go to a social gathering, you don't try to take the spotlight right away. You kind of see where you can fit in. You kind of see what's going on. You see where the cool kids are at and where the chill kids are at. You see where the party is and where the quiet zone is. And you kind of feel out the terrain and decide where you're going to hang out and decide where you want to invest your time and energy. And it's the same in poker. I kind of try to feel out who's there to be social, who's there to play, and how I can work with that. You know, maybe I can just, you know, sometimes I go to a poker game, there isn't a lot of money on the table, but there's someone I can have a great conversation with. And I go there to, you know, socialize and make a friend and maybe learn some things about business and stuff. So I really go to just get comfortable, take my time, play pretty solid, pretty conservative for the first few orbits. And then when I kind of feel where the spots are, when I feel where the money making opportunity is, then I'll extremely adjust my strategy to go after those spots, whether that means changing my ranges or straight up changing seats or engaging in certain types of conversation that may, you know, irritate certain players who are ready to tilt or whatever. I'll implement those things into my game. So I have everything in my tool belt, but I just kind of don't show my cards right away. And once I know where my energy and my conversation and my bets are going to give me the highest return, that's when I start focusing on those spots heavily. Okay. A Russian freak says, can you please explain a bit more why position would be more important the deeper stacks are? Aren't the deep stacks allowing you to play more hands? Okay. The main thing that I can speak to about that is, generally speaking, big pots are for big hands. David Sklansky. And to get, you know, big bets in, 100 big blind bets, 200, 300 big blind bets, you're going to be looking at more cooler situations. So you're going to be looking at, you know, like flush over flush, boat over boat, straight versus set. That might not even get the money in. Things like that. And when you know that, how do I put this? Okay, so deeper stack, sometimes like I need a hand example on screen and sometimes I don't have one. So it's a little hard to wrap it off the top of my head. But because you have more information about your opponents when you're in position, you're more able to avoid the coolers. Whereas when you're out of position, it's harder for you to dodge a cooler. And because the bigger pots, the deeper stack situations involve more cooler situations, being in position is usually going to allow you to get the extra bet, whereas being out of position is not going to allow you to get the extra bet. And the deeper the stacks are, the bigger that last bet is. So that's why being in position is more important as stacks get deeper, because the last bet that you are going to get is going to be much bigger. And all things being equal, the person in position is going to get that bet more often than the player is out of position is going to get that bet. And so the extra money gained by the player in position is amplified when stacks are deeper versus when they're shallower. Also, when stacks are shallower, money will go in more easily with medium strength hands, where if roles were reversed, both players would have lost the same. But in the deep stack spots, it's really just the big coolers where the money goes in, and it's that being in position allows you to get that last bet, which is the big bet. I hope that explains it well. So the deep stacks allow you to play more hands, but they allow you to play more hands in position. It's also more so that just that like being out of position because of that threat there is so much worse. And so the player in position can play more hands because of the threat of that big bet. So you can get away with more, blocker bluffs, single card bluffs, things like that because of the implied threat of that bigger bet and the big advantage. I hope that explains it well. I may need to use a hand example, which I would prep a presentation for, but a Russian freak, please let me know if that does a decent job of explaining the concept. Okay. MJ Richard says, how much should we expand our range or 3-bet range when on the button or cutoff? Would you 3-bet with a 60% range? I'm going to cover more of that in the aggression or this selection lesson. It's kind of a blend between aggression and selection, but it's probably going to fit in this selection lesson because that's going to be about range construction and stuff. And it's hard to give exact numbers because it depends on how loose is the opener, what is their strategy when facing a 3-bet. Is it someone who calls a lot of 3-bets and then check folds flops a lot? Is it someone who folds to a lot of 3-bets? Is it someone who calls a lot of 3-bets and then check raises flops a lot? Someone who calls 3-bets and leads out? Is it someone who 4-bets a lot? So these are all the factors that we need to consider when deciding how wide we 3-bet. So pay attention to your opponent's opening range, pay attention to how they react to 3-bets, and pay attention to what their post-flop tendencies are. And with those 3 factors in mind, you'll get a better idea of how much you should widen your 3-bet range. A big thing to think about is just if the player makes a lot of mistakes post-flop and you're very deep stacked, you may just want to 3-bet them super wide, like really wide, like any suited ace, like almost any suited face, like suited connector, suited gapper, all pairs, all broadways, because you want to get that person heads up with you being in position. Whereas when you call, the other players behind will get to play a pot with you. So really another thing to consider is, do I want to play multi-way or do I want to play heads up? And generally, if you're super deep stacked, like 400 or 500 big blinds deep with, a whale, you want to play in position with an inflated pot heads up as much as possible. So you want to 3-bet really wide. But to give you an exact percentage, I just simply cannot do that because there are too many variables to consider, MJ Richer. But I hope I gave you a clear idea of what factors to consider to, construct your 3-bet range. Thanks for the info. Greatly appreciated. Do you have any more handouts? I personally don't, because I just put together these slides in about 2.5, 3 hours. But I can speak with Jonathan about potential handouts that would match the information that we covered in this presentation. What is a poker squeeze you talked about? A squeeze is a raise when there has been a raise and a call ahead of you. A lot of books speak about this. I think I probably learned it in No Limit Holdem Theory and Practice by Sklansky and I don't know if it's Miller or Malmuth, one of those two. But a squeeze is when there is a raise and a call and we re-raise. So a 3-bet would be there's a raise and we re-raise, but a squeeze is there's a raise and a call and we re-raise. And the thinking behind that is we can usually squeeze with a wider range than we could just straight up 3-bet because the person who flats the open often has a weaker range than they would have if they 3-bet. So we kind of consider that dead money. That's kind of changed over the years. And it's really, again, super opponent specific to decide how wide you should squeeze. You need to be aware of your opponent's flatting range versus their 3-betting range and what they both look like. But that's what a squeeze is. It's when you reopen the action with a raise after there's been a raise and a call. Okay, Jay Reagan, if early raisers typically open stronger, how often do you 3-bet one position with marginal to strong holdings? Generally speaking, if someone's opening with a really strong range, I usually respect it and I usually fold. So yes, we want to play our position, but when a player opens from early position with a strong range, I'm often just going to be folding in that spot. But again, super situational, super specific, but generally I would say not often. I'd be flatting a lot. And if you're really, really deep, you can throw in some bluffs in there, 4-5 suited and ace-5 suited and stuff. But you'd probably want to be three betting those like 10% of the time you have them. So it's not like you always three bet them. It's like once in a while you mix in ace five suited or something. But I generally stick to very strong three bet ranges when dealing with early position openers who are playing strong ranges. What about trap limping? Yeah, I'm super down with the trap limp. I limp with aces under the gun all the time. But I like to have a dynamic in play. I like to know that there's someone who likes to raise the action because it's not fun when it gets limped around. When it gets limped around, I just be careful with my hand. You can still get some value with a pair. And if no one else limps in and you just play against the blinds, you have a decent chance of getting a couple bets out because they're going to have a hard time folding a pair. So I'm all for trap limping. I love limping aces, and I limp in some weaker hands as well that I think aren't quite good enough to raise, but are hands that I'd like to see a flop with, like small medium pairs, suited aces, which can cooler suited connectors. Some of the weaker broadways sometimes I'll limp in, king queen off under the gun, ace jack off under the gun, get people to come along with weaker broadways, weaker aces. But I would avoid open limping suited connectors from early position because you're setting yourself up to get coolered by suited broadways and suited aces. We'll talk a lot more about that in the selection webinar. So that's Evans. What happens when you're in a tournament situation, have an aggressive player behind you that three bets up frequently? At what point do you consider four betting, or how tight you should be calling three bets? That's a big one. It has a lot to do with stack sizes. But for example, when I was playing the Fallsview Classic and I was on the final two or three tables, we were really deep, and I had Mike Lea on my left, who had won the tournament like twice in the last 3 years. He ended up winning it that year as well. And I knew that he's very aggressive. I knew that he three bet a lot. So I just folded a ton, and I just waited for my table to break. And I found that because I was opening very infrequently, he would let them get through because he was respecting I had a tight range. But yeah, I generally adjust by tightening up. I don't go for the I keep opening and then I'm going to four bet more. I go for the approach of, if this guy's going ham, I'm just going to let him do his thing, and I'm just going to wait for my hands, because I'm not losing chips by folding. I'm still raising, my 10, 15% of hands per orbit. That's fine. I just, dial it back from the 25, 35% I would otherwise be raising. If you want to go to battle with them, by all means. In terms of at what point do you consider four betting, you should usually just four bet the first time. Let them know you ain't going to take that. But I can't give a specific one on it. You kind of just got to, either you set the tone right away, or you just feel it out and try to pick up a tell for when you think you might be out of line and go for a four bet. In terms of how tight you should be calling three bets, again, it really depends on stack size, and the shallower your stack size, the less you should be opening, unless you're planning to four bet all in over the three bet. But I keep it pretty tight, ace 9, ace 10 suited plus, king queen suited, queen jack suited, maybe jack 10 suited, maybe 10-9 suited. I don't think it's really a big deal to fold those hands to three bets out of position. Like, facing three bet out of position just sucks. So I'll just fold a lot of hands that I would otherwise open. And then just, if you're going to call three bets, be ready to play some variance, because you're going to have to check raise those draws, check call a lot of spots out of position. So I guess generally the shallower I are, the shallower I am, the more willing I am to call the three bets out of position, because, at 30, 35 big blinds, you have a good pot to stack ratio to check shove with draws, check shove with pair and weak draws. And so the positional advantage isn't as big. But 40, 50 blinds, 60 blinds plus, I just really cut down my opening range so that I don't have to face the frequent three bets. And I just save those 2.5, 3 big blinds for later spots. And sometimes I just wait for a table change. It's just, that's part of the game, is is accepting the terrain, like that example I had with Tony, where if the guy's just going to 3-bet you every hand, well, wait for a hand that you're comfortable 4-betting and going to town with, and if you get aces, maybe think about trapping with it. Something about a replay. How do we watch that? I'm going to talk to Jonathan about that. I'm pretty sure the replay will be available, but I have to talk to him about it. The Mark says it may go up on JL's YouTube. I think I'm probably also going to send out an email about that. So grips.com, gripsed.com. If you sign up there, you'll be on the list, and I'll send out an email with information as soon as I get the go ahead from Jonathan. Okay. Regarding keeping poor players to your right in cash games, I usually worry about seat selection from our relative position to the best players in the game and less so for the worst. I agree with that, MJ Richer. If there are very tough players, I also like to kind of let them be the meat of the sandwich and let the weak player be one bun and I'm the other bun. So I get to see how they all react. Because yeah, even though I have a slightly lower expectation on the weaker player by not being in direct position, I have a higher expectation on all the regs by being in position to them. So if I can pick off some of the money from them, I'm still getting it from the weaker player indirectly through them. I like that strategy as well. Sometimes directly to the fish, the weaker player isn't the optimal seat, but in a lot of lineups, it's going to be. What's the base preflop range that was used as a basis for the position adjustment charts? It's just the range that I use when I play cash games, and it is based on the percentage likelihood of being dealt the best hand. So, if you're under the gun and 8 players are left to act and you have a top 11% hand, you likely are dealt the best hand on the table, and therefore putting money in the pot is going to show a positive expectation. Likewise, if you're on the cutoff and there's 4 players total, if you have a top 25% hand, odds are you got dealt the best hand on the table and you're going to make money by putting chips in the middle. That's where I got my chart for cash games for, but it's not set in stone, and it's probably not like the most optimal, up-to-date GTO chart. So like I said, grab the concept. It's a decent baseline, but don't get married to the numbers on there. Okay, so if the game gets deeper, we care less about opponents folding their bad hands and continuing with good ones. Yeah, so if the game gets deeper, we care less about opponents folding with their bad hands and continuing with good ones. Yeah, just the deeper the game gets, the more valuable position is, and yeah, because the deeper the game gets, the more important the turn and river play are, the later street play are. So it's all about the hands that can make the nuts on later streets. And therefore, like king, queen off, ace, jack off, ace, queen off, ace, king off even isn't like super valuable because you're not going to be making the most money playing the biggest pots with one pair hands. Okay. Answered that one. The Mork says, I'll be playing my first big tournament in a couple of months and have to travel to be there. What is the most important thing you recommend I do? I feel like I did a video on this. I have a video about how I won big at Fallsview. That's a good video covering that. I also have a video on live preparation. But the most important thing, if I could recommend one thing, find out where the healthy food option is at the destination that you're going to and get there a day early if you can, so you can stock up on healthy food, clean water, find out where the gym is, where you can exercise, find out places where you can chill out, be quiet, and get there early so that you can get comfortable. Walk around the casino or, the neighborhood, the area, and just get comfortable so you feel safe and secure and you don't feel like uncertain about stuff. The worst thing that can happen is not having food, not having quality food, not having a quality source of energy when you have to play a long tournament. So the more you can know about the area, the better. probably do some Google research. Like I'm going to Reno for the first time for that Run It Up series. I don't know anything about Reno, so I'm going to do some Google work, figure out what's up, maybe rent a car so that I can pick up groceries, try to get a room on a lower floor so it's closer to the elevators and therefore I can get more rest on break, things like that. And make sure you get a lot of sleep and make sure you're calm. So I would advise doing your studying earlier rather than later. Don't cram right before you go there. By the time you hop on the plane, it's time to go to the tournament. It's time to just chill out, relax, do what you do to get in the zone. You can review hands if you want, you can do quizzes if you want, but don't try to learn new information right before you play. Trust that if you knew enough to get there, you know enough to get farther, and that by staying calm, staying relaxed, focusing on your breathing, focusing on just feeling good, feeling happy, feeling your best is what's going to get you the best results. And don't put too much pressure on yourself. If the cards are in your favor, if the stars align, you play well, you just might win that thing. But if you're going in there being like, I need to win, and you told all your friends like, yo, I'm going to win this tournament and all this and that, it puts a lot of pressure on yourself in something where you have a limited amount of control because luck is a factor. And then that extra pressure leads to extra stress. It can lead to judgment when making mistakes. So then it's unforgivable if you make a mistake and you're hard on yourself. You create more tension and stress hormones and more mistakes. And like, you don't want that. So just like chill out, have fun, relax, make sure you're comfortable. Trust that you know what you need to know. And if you're crossing over time zones and you have trouble sleeping, melatonin. Okay. Rocksteady, do you adjust your pre-flop bet sizing in 6-max cash game online based on stack size? No. I mean, generally in the games I've played, people are playing 100 bigs. I adjust based on position. The one time I'll adjust greatly is if there is a really loose player who's like playing like 80, 90% of hands, and I think that they'll call a bigger raise size. I'll make it bigger. So when I'm playing in position, I can play a bigger pot. But we'll go deep into that in the aggression webinar on April 30th. Can I read this? Yes. If you had to start over, would you play to your bankroll or to your skill level? Bankroll. I think it's too stressful to play outside of your bankroll, even if your skill is there. And stress really eats away at the human. And I don't like that feeling. So I find that when I'm playing outside my bankroll, I just feel very uncomfortable. And that's not a good place to be making decisions from. So I would play to my bankroll. That's how I built my bankroll over my career. I never went broke. I'm never going to go broke. I have safety, I have security, I have comfort, I have confidence. And that's a thing about respecting my bankroll. I think playing at the skill level, it's fine, but it kind of shows a little bit of impatience, and impatience in that can carry over to impatience in other places. So I think it can kind of be setting up for disaster. And while like it can build you up faster, it can break you down more. So the higher you fly, the harder you fall kind of thing. And if you're someone who is comfortable with that and enjoys those kind of swings and likes the rush of that, by all means go for it. It's just personally not for me. And like, I have an extremely addictive personality. I'm someone who would go for that kind of stuff, but I know how easy I'd get carried away from it. So in the interest of just protecting myself and doing what's best for me, I don't. I play to my bankroll. I'm very strict with bankroll management and money management. And every time I've deviated from that, I've seen the snowball effect, the domino effect of doing so, and it doesn't lead to good things. So I play to my bankroll for sure. Is the position significant different from cash games to tournaments? It really just depends on stack sizes and stack sizes, ante, how much dead money, and then in tournaments also ICM comes into play, which can make position even more valuable. But in terms of like the strategies we discussed in today's presentation, they apply directly to tournaments the same way they do in cash games. The information you just received is applicable in both environments, 100%. Okay. Kep says, I play mostly tournaments, and I feel like when I do play cash, I play much like I would a tournament. Standard. However, I do bluff a lot less since I play 1-2 and people don't fold enough. Is that a bad strategy? No, that's correct. Generally, in cash games, it is optimal to play a more value-heavy strategy to focus on playing hands that can get paid off and really value betting a lot. The reason we bluff in cash games is generally to get action on our value hands. So we bluff a lot in small pots, we can get paid in the big pots. This is because stacks are very deep relative to the dead money in the middle, and therefore winning the ante, stealing the blinds, winning pots on the flop isn't really worth that much, whereas making the right decision, getting paid the maximum on river bets is worth a lot. Whereas in tournaments where stacks are a lot shallower, and therefore the dead money in the middle, the blinds and antes are more significant relative to the stack sizes, the maximum risk. Winning the blinds is much more important. Taking down pots on the flop is much more important. Winning pre-flop pots with 3 bets is much more important and significant. And therefore in tournaments, we bluff because winning those pots is worth a lot. It's going to make the difference between our survival in the tournament and death in a tournament. And we so rarely play turns and rivers, especially deeper in the tournament, that we don't really need to worry so much about making the nuts and coolering people. We just need to make hands that are the best hand on the flop, and occasionally on the turn. I hope that makes sense. So generally we play, optimally speaking, tournaments with the dead money and with the shallower stacks favor a more bluff heavy strategy, and focusing on winning a lot of pots pre-flop and on the flop, whereas cash games focus on a more value heavy strategy, focusing on making better decisions on turns and rivers, and thereby the value of acquiring information is much more important in cash games than it is in tournaments. Cap, hope that answers. Was I talking about limping AA and cash or MTTs? I do it in both. I've been advised against limping AA and MTTs unless we're at a super aggressive table. I mean, it really depends. I'm a big fan of slow playing the aces. It's just, it wins a lot. Following up previous question, where can we see that pre-flop chart? It is in my ebook, the Cash Game Guide, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's also in Excelling at No Limit Holdem. Chapter 1, Excelling at No Limit Holdem. It's there, so you can get it in either book. Excelling at No Limit Holdem, which is available on Amazon, and the Cash Game Guide, which is exclusively available at gripst.com. Okay, yeah, 5 Pillars video. Yeah, that's 5 Pillars video is a great thing to watch in preparation for a live tournament. It's going to help you just feel your best and play your best. Natural bodies of water will help set you the area. That's a good tip, Macros DJ, but wug bodies of water in the desert. Thank you for the great advice. Love it. Not expecting anything or putting any pressure on myself at all. Just want to enjoy it. Thanks again. You're welcome, the Morg. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you have a fantastic experience. Enjoy yourself. Shardy AYC. In a home cash game, I raise the button with a wide range for position. The other players have started 3 or 4 betting me. This is a daily game, and we play with each other a lot. Can I defend without just playing super narrow range on the button? I mean, how deep are the stacks, Sharda? If the stacks are really deep, you can call with a very wide range. If the stacks are shallower, you probably shouldn't defend as many hands. But if they're 3 or 4 betting you a lot and you want to defend more with position, you can raise smaller. That's an adjustment we talked about. You can min raise or 2.5x, 3x, and then their 3 bets will be smaller. And therefore, you'll have a deeper pot to stack ratio and you can defend. The other thing to consider is what kind of hands are they 3 betting with? Because if they're 3 betting few hands, you probably want to defend a pretty narrow range. But if they're 3-betting a lot of hands and they're widening their range, you can therefore widen your range and still have better hands than them. Your other option is to 4-bet them. And in terms of best hands, best candidates for 4-betting, we'll be talking about that in the selection webinar in May. How do you go about studying your hand ranges? I've tried to create charts, just memorize it by studying the visual charts, but it's had to make it stick. Any other method you use when starting out? Honestly, I just played a lot. I just played a lot of poker. I'd look at hand charts in books, and then I just play, and I started to get a feel for it. And then I just kind of learned like where I could adjust based on the game. And then it just became second nature. And then I started deviating from the charts. And I've actually recently looked at some charts. I'm like, oh, I want to make sure I have optimal ranges. And I'm just like, man, trying to memorize charts is nuts. There's so much information. And then I remembered, right, it's good to know the baseline. It's good to have some idea of information on what the worst hand you want to open from each position is. I find that's a good trick. Don't remember all of them. Just remember the worst hand. The old notation we had was you didn't have a chart, but you had like AJ plus, which meant ace jack, ace queen, ace king. Or you had like ATS plus, which meant ace 10 suited and all better suited hands. 5-4S plus, which meant any suited connector, 5-4 suited and up. So you don't have to be like, oh, 6-7, 7-8, it's just 5-4 suited plus, deuces plus. So think, what is the worst pair I open here? What is the worst Broadway hand I open here? What is the worst ace? What is the worst suited ace? What's the worst suited Broadway? What's the worst suited connector, suited gapper, suited two gapper, or in some cases suited face card, things like that. And just do a couple positions at a time. You know, do your under the gun range, your mid position range, and your button range. Your button cutoff ranges are going to be the most important ones anyway, other than your blind defense ranges. And then just play a lot. Play a lot. And remember that it's not about getting the exact hands. It's about getting close. And then knowing that in some cases you open a little wider because, you know, there's tight players behind or there's a weak player in the blind. In other situations, you open tighter and start to get situational awareness. And then you can throw the starting hand chart away because you have an idea of what the baseline is, but you're focusing on the more important thing, which is how likely am I to have position in this hand? Who am I most likely playing against in this hand? And do I have the type of hand that will do well in either a heads up or a multi-way pot? And am I setting myself up for a heads up or multi-way pot? And I would really ditch the memorization. I was a big memorizer in school. I was really good at all that stuff. So it's like, oh, let's, carry that over to poker. And it's a dynamic game. Once you have a general understanding of it, I don't think it's important to memorize the charts specifically. Maybe some of the very best players in the world would agree with me. But unless we're out there playing super high rollers and stuff, it's probably not necessary to be that exact. And there are probably better ways to use your mental energy. Also know that when you're being strict and rigid with yourself, you're draining yourself of energy. And when you're more relaxed, you have more creativity flowing through you. You have more openness. You have more intuition and more energy available, which is going to help you make better reads on later streets and ultimately help you make more money than, playing one pip too weak, like, ace 7 off instead of ace 8 off kind of thing. That's not going to be the end of the world. But, beating yourself up about missing it or wondering too much and worrying too much about not being exact is going to get a lot of stress hormones in your body, which is going to make you feel uncomfortable, which is going to lead to probably making more significant mistakes down the road. So don't worry too much about getting it perfect. Just enjoy getting practice and know that the more you play and the more you review, the more you are going to get it, get it down. Okay, what are implied odds? Implied odds are the potential payoff you can get on a hand. That's a pretty long topic. I have a whole video on that. If you search YouTube for the triple threat Vimavra, it talks about implied odds for about 10 or 15 minutes in the aggression section, I believe. So that'll allow you to go really deep on it. Because it's a very, very helpful thing for sure. And yeah, it's the potential payoff. You know, if you make your flush, how much money will you make with your flush? If you, you know, hit your set on the flop, how much money can you expect to get paid? And then there are reverse implied odds, which is if you make a hand, but it's the second best hand, how much can you expect to lose? And that video, the triple threat on YouTube, will take you deeper into that. Not as deep as we went today. This was the deeper dive than the triple threat has, but that's a good starting point. And we will go deeper on that in the selection webinar in May. Okay. Thanks, Evan. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Evan. Looking forward to the next series. You're all very welcome. Okay. The replay on YouTube, I'm not sure. We will communicate everything via email and Twitter. So Grips Poker on Twitter is me, and Jonathan Little on Twitter is John Little. Local cash game allows 200 big blind buy-in. If restarting, do you buy in full or start 100, double through dead money? I start for 100 in less, and if I see that the players on my direct right are sitting deep and they're weaker players, I will usually top up to cover them. But I'll generally sit in for 100 big blinds. If I lose some chips, I'll top up to 100, I'll top up to 100, I'll top up to 100, and then just wait till I double. If the players to my right are sitting 150 and they're weaker players, I'll top up to 150. And if, you know, they're sitting with 2, 3, 4, 500 blinds and they're clearly worse players than me, I clearly have a big edge and I have position on them, I'll just sit with 200. But I will wait until I have, you know, certainty about that, because looks can be deceiving before I buy them for 200. Because as I said before, you can always add chips to the table, but you can't take them off. And do I defend blinds in cash games like tourneys, or does it not matter because you can leave change seats? No, the defense strategy is different because of the addition of added dead money with antes, and also because stack sizes change the optimal defending ranges. So we can defend wider when we're shallower, and then depending on how close we are to the money, there's ICM considerations which affect it. So there are more variables in play in tournaments that affect my defending range, and also how I choose to defend, whether it's passively with calls or aggressively with 3 bets. So definitely different strategies. Okay. Thank you. Great information. You are most welcome, HypnoBoo. Memorizing the worst hands in the opening range test is hugely helpful. I should have thought to try doing that instead. Hey, man, the more you thought of the best thing, which is ask the professional who's done this before what they did, and then you don't have to figure it out yourself. That's what learning is all about. Much more simple than remembering a picture. Thank you so much, and welcome to Poker Coaching. You deserve it. Looking forward to April and May. Thank you so much, the Morgue. It's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this team. Great webinars. Kudos to you and John for making this happen. Thanks, Evan. Glad you're a part of Poker Coaching. Thanks, Iceblade. Is that the real Iceblade? The one I gave a shout out to in my top 10? Maybe. Okay. Are there any other questions? We are way over time, which is kind of standard for me. I really like to give a lot. Jonathan asked me to do 2 webinars this month. I'm like, no, man, I can only do 1 because it takes so much out of me. But honestly, what I put in here probably could have been 2 webinars. So you guys kind of got a 2-for-1. You'll probably get a 2-for-1 on April 30th, and you'll probably get a 2-for-1 on May 28th as well, because that's just how I roll. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys appreciate it. And okay, we got one more question. Can you go over the thing about the guy in the WSOP with aces? I am not sure what you're referring to, Macros. Oh, Greggy, the guy who won the main event. Oh, okay, yeah. I was just talking about how as stacks get deeper, the value of position goes up, And therefore, it is correct to narrow the range of hands we 3-bet with from out of position. Because although we're building a pot out of position, we aren't going to be able to get all in, by the turn or maybe the river. And therefore, the player in position has a big advantage over us. So rather than 3-betting and building up a pot that we're going to play out of position where the player in position has a bigger advantage, as the stacks get deeper, it is actually correct to flat call more of your hands from the big blind and 3-bet fewer hands. And it actually gets to the point where once you're 300, 400, 500 big blinds deep, many professionals consider it incorrect to 3-bet even a hand as strong as aces, unless, the game is playing so huge where people are opening for, 8 blinds on the button and you can 3-bet to like 40 blinds and they'll still call. But if we're talking standard sizes, 2.5 to 3.5 opens and 3-bets to, 7.5 to 10 big blinds, because there's still so much play behind and your hand is becoming pretty clearly defined. It's better to not 3-bet those hands and put yourself in position and actually just flat to defend with majority of your range, if not all of it. And you're playing a smaller pot, but your hand is disguised. And when you're that deep out of position, it's very hard to stack your opponent anyway. You're much more likely to get stacked, and therefore better to keep the size of the pot small with hands even as strong as aces, was what we were discussing there. And that's something that I learned from the 2012 main event champion and player of the year, Greg Merson, who was a mentor of mine and also a good friend, as we lived in an apartment together in Toronto in 2011 after meeting at the World Series of Poker the summer before. You might say it was a match made in heaven. That's applicable when it's deep stacked. It's applicable when it's deep stacked. Because when the blinds are huge, the stacks are actually shallow. So it's not so much about what the blinds are. It's about how deep the stacks are. Okay. Well done and well spoken, clear, concise info. Thank you, Jay Riken. Okay, last chance to get questions in, people. It's coming up on my bedtime. So if there are no more questions, I am ready to crash. What's my favorite color? Well, some people would say it's not a color, it's a shade. My favorite color is white. The most rich color of them all. It contains all of them. It's the color of the sun. Some might say it looks like it, even though if you zoom in, it looks orange. But it's the color of the moon, which is one of my favorite things in the universe. And I've just always loved the color white. I find it just such a soothing color to look at. And my second favorite color, if you're like, oh, you can't pick a shade, you got to pick a color. Purple. Purple. I love purple and white. And then blue would be next. So if anyone studies chakras, I'm very upper chakra oriented, with white being the top, red being the second from the top, and blue being the third from the top. Cool. Appreciate your time and info. Going to join poker coaching and learn more. Awesome. I don't know for sure. I have to ask Jonathan, but I'm pretty sure if you guys want Jonathan to know that you learned about poker coaching from me, the link to use is pokercoaching.com/all-in. And it might be pokercoaching.com/grips or pokercoaching.com/Evan. So I'll find out about that, but I'll talk to Jonathan about it. And we'll have a whole bonus thing for anyone who comes to poker coaching through me. It's all in the works, so it's pretty exciting. Okay. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. Thank you so much for watching this webinar. I really hope you enjoy the information and find it useful and profitable. If you guys want to let me know how your game and your results have changed as a result of applying the strategies and theories discussed in this webinar, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at gripsedpoker, GRIPSEDPOKER on Twitter. And also I am Gripsed on YouTube, GRIPSED. So feel free to send me a message on Twitter or post a comment on one of my YouTube videos or chat in our community section, as that's where I hang out. And hearing about improvements and successes from my students is one of the things that makes me the most happy in life. It makes me feel like I'm of value in this world. It makes me feel like I have purpose. It makes me feel like things are meaningful. So don't be shy. Please share your feedback, your comments with me. Even if you're normally a lurker, know that it makes a huge difference. It's what motivates me to keep on producing and keep on living healthy and keep on doing all those good things every day. Cool. Thanks for the webinar. I think Cheputij, I'm not going to say that right. Thanks for the webinar. I think poker coaching was missing your comparisons, cash games to tournaments. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. Thank you. I know Alex has experience playing both. I know Jonathan has experience playing both. I probably have more experience with cash games, and I've probably also trained with more elite cash game players, although it's close because Jonathan's like super networked and super connected. But I have had the privilege of living with and studying with and sweating and training with some of the very, very best cash game players in the world. And I played millions of hands, and I've watched so many videos on cash games, and my students have become the best cash game players in the world. Charlie Carroll, Ben Heath, Ali Msirovic. Now I'm learning from them. So yeah, it's I guess I do bring some stuff to the team in the cash game realm, and I think there's also some philosophies on life and on the game, mental game and stuff that are pretty unique to me with my background, helping people with peak performance and addiction recovery and things like that, which I'm very passionate about. It's very close to me. So yeah, I'm excited to bring a new flavor to the mix and bring more value to the team. It's awesome. Stola says, my son Easton wants to say hi to you. Hi, Easton. Thanks. Thanks for the greets. I appreciate it. El Deuterino, or Ekel Deuterino, you're welcome for the webinar. And Herbs asks, is the training in Gripsed still going to run in parallel of any content going to poker coaching? Yep. Grips.com is going to continue to run, and I will be offering different things on grips.com that I'm offering on poker coaching. Poker coaching, I'm going to be focusing on the quizzes and some webinars, and Gripsed is really going to focus a lot on the free offerings, the free training programs, kind of the free Project Get Me Stacking programs. There's lots of cool stuff in the works, which I'll be releasing over the next few weeks. Are going to be big, and the next couple months are going to be really big too. And I'll have some products as well. Not a lot, but some products that are exclusively available on Gripsed. So I'll still be doing my own thing on the side at Gripsed, but I'm going to be putting a ton of my energy into pokercoaching.com because I think it's a really good opportunity. I think it's a really good team that I've been invited to be a part of. And I think that, individuals win games, but teams win championships. And I would really love to be on the championship winning team in the poker coaching, poker education arena. So it makes sense that I'm going to focus on putting a lot of really high quality stuff into poker coaching. Chris, poker coaching package subscription, maybe, or promotion, maybe. I'll talk to Jonathan about it. He's a very creative guy. He knows how to structure deals and arrangements and promotions and packages and giveaways and stuff. So I'm sure that he and I will come to something that is mutually beneficial for both of us. And most importantly, maximally beneficial for the students, because regardless of where you guys are learning, as long as you're getting better, and as long as when people ask, you just say the name. I learned from Jonathan Little, I learned from Evan Jarvis. Doesn't matter whether it's at grips.com or floattheturn.com or pokercoaching.com. The main thing is that you guys are getting better, and if people ask, that you're happy to share who you learned it from. And our personal names are more important than our brand names, and we appreciate any referrals, recommendations, and shout outs, but please only speak the truth. You don't need to oversell us or butter us up or anything. Just, we appreciate when you honestly share with people how you feel about us and our teachings. And you guys are what make it work. And girls. Okay, so that looks like it's wrapping it for the questions and wrapping it for my energy levels as well. Do I hit the big stacks at parks? Nope. I live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So I play at Niagara Falls, Brantford Charity Casino, Rama Casino, and then I play tournaments in Vegas. I'm going to play my first one in Reno, sometimes Montreal, and the Caribbean. I really like to play poker in the Caribbean too. It's kind of my dream, actually, to live at the Hard Rock Hotel in Punta Cana and play in their cash game room on the daily and play tournaments on the island, just live in the Dominican Republic. So it's not there yet, but it's in the works. And, if dreams do come true, and this law of attraction, this power of manifestation is real, don't be surprised if you see me posting pictures on Instagram at Gripst from the Hard Rock Hotel in Punta Cana, living the dream. It's I believe it can happen. So it's just a matter of focusing the energy, doing good quality work, and being patient with the process. Rocksteady says, thank you for your time tonight. You are welcome, brother. Thank you for your time as well. Thank you, everyone who invested your time tonight to spend it with me. I know you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. And I really look forward to hearing your results from applying the information, hearing how many tough spots you avoided and how many really profitable spots you put yourself in by making these adjustments. And I look forward to seeing you April 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for the next webinar, where we will be taking a deep dive into the second component of the triple threat aggression. This has been Evan Jarvis, also known as Gripst, for pokercoaching.com. Thank you for watching, and you know what to do. Take what you've learned, go out there, and get stacking.